Good evening. What's good, y'all? Hopefully you can hear me. And thank you for whoever is tuning in. Thank you for listening to me run my big mouth. So let's see what we got going on. Let's see. Sending out. Oh, wow, they're trying to line up quickly there. Who we got thumbs up? Austin. Good evening, Austin. Charlie, what's going on out there in the frozen tundra, sir? I just drove past a very nice Porsche 911 Turbo, Charlie. Beautiful. Awesome, what's going on? Got about 15 minutes to kind of run through some things. So let's see what we got here. Who's going to tune in? See what we got. Give it another minute or so. Marcus, Marky D, what's going on, man? Still rocking the Gazelles? We've gone international. Stefan Metzler out there in Switzerland. The Swiss connection, what's going on? Stefan, I think you'll appreciate this one. You being of the anarchist mindset. So, Cook, what's going on out there in Detroit? Staying warm? You all dug out of the snow? No, but my car is at the perfect temperature, Vince. Frank, what's going on? How you going out there in Oklahoma? Claire, what's going on? All right, so let's get started here. I don't want to take too much time. And this conversation came up because, and everybody can hear me well, I'm assuming. So this topic came up because on the other topic I talked about before of the pie, one of my high school classmates, Keisha, you know what's going on, Keisha? I'm sure you'll sign in later on. Keisha had kind of mentioned a sweatshop, right? And, you know, I actually wrote a paper in college about sweatshops and how sweatshops, people throw that term around haphazardly without having done any real research on what is a sweatshop. And I was just thinking about this as I was driving. There's a book, and you've probably seen it out there become a meme on Facebook that says, you know, everyone I don't like is a Hitler. You know, and it's pretty funny, but one of the things I realized, once again, economic fallacies, is that every factory that doesn't meet the AFL-CIO standards for 2016 is a sweatshop. That's what people have come to believe, that everything is a sweatshop. But, you know, I'm always going to come back to history, right? You had to go back and look at things from history. And, of course, I like to come from the Judeo-Christian morality standpoint. But I like to bring the context and perspective. And do you understand that we in the United States, you know, we are well into the information age, which we've been in for, you know, arguably at least the past 25 years, at least since like 1990 or so, we've been in the information age. We were in the industrial age for about 100 years or so. But before that, like everyone else, we were agrarian in the agricultural age. But here's what you have to realize, that large portions of the world still in 2016 are still in the agrarian culture, and many of them are starting to transition into the industrial era, right? I mean, let's take China, for example. But China and India are probably the two prime examples where they still have, they're running three different economies, right? Three different types of economies in China and India. On one hand, you have a large portion of the population is still in the agrarian culture. I mean, people are still living hand to mouth, right? Still doing everything the same way they did, their ancestors did. And then you have a large portion that's gone into the industrial era. But then you have, you know, of course, there's parts of China that are very high tech. So you have parts that are in the information age. So what you have is that mixed economies, if you will, whereas the United States, we've long since left the agrarian culture. Obviously there's still people farming, but we don't farm in America the way we farmed, a generation ago, let alone 100 years ago. So the same thing with the industrial area. And we like to look at things and think that, well, if you're not in this factory, sitting in a climate controlled area where it's 76 degrees with the perfect air filters, sitting in ergonomically correct, ergonomic chairs and so on and so forth, then you're in a sweatshop. And there was a great video I'd encourage you all to watch, to invest the time to watch Milton Friedman's video. And, where he talks about like the fact that his mother came from, I want to say it was Hungary or one of those places, right? So she, Russian and all that, and then she came here, and of course, Milton Friedman became a Nobel laureate in economics, but he said, hey, his mother, when she immigrated to the United States, she essentially worked in a sweatshop, what we would by all accounts call a sweatshop today. But sweatshops are not all bad. I know it sounds terrible to say, like, oh, it's like saying slavery's not all bad. Well, sweatshops and slavery are not the same thing. Don't get it twisted. There are, quote, sweatshops that are essentially people are held in bondage, right? You have people who are brought in, snuck into the country, by coyotes or whatever like that. And they are essentially held in bondage and chained to their desk doing these things. That does take place. So let me acknowledge that actually does take place. But most of the things that are called sweatshops are not sweatshops. The perfect example, and we always, from a business standpoint, I talk about the traditional distribution chain, and the best example are tennis shoes. You can use any other clothing or whatever like that, but let's use tennis shoes. So, for example, you got your boy LeBron with his safety pin wearing self as the Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year. Should call him Sportswoman with his beta self. But anyway, wearing the safety pin. But his tennis shoes that, kids will kill each other for will run you an easy $200, depending upon, what the scarcity of them are. But here's the thing. They probably only cost about, $5. I mean, maybe on the high end, $10 to make. I don't know exactly where they're made. Malaysia, Bangladesh, wherever they're made. I'm willing to bet that they cost no more than $10 to make. But by the time that they go through the jobber, the buyer, the wholesaler, the importer who brings them in from Malaysia or Bangladesh, and by the time you pick them up at Foot Locker, you've paid $200. But the manufacturing cost was $10, and that's probably inflating the cost. So here's the thing about that is, I remember years ago having a discussion. It was an argument, but I'm gonna be nice and call it a discussion with another high school classmate of mine, a young lady who I've called a rebel without a cause. I mean, whatever it is, she's going to be the rebel, whatever. It just doesn't matter. She still cracks me up to this day. But I remember we had this discussion about the whole idea of wages, and she made the utterly ridiculous statement. She had a problem with the fact of outsourcing, right, or companies or going offshore. And she said that if it was up to her, it would be against the law to move your businesses offshore manufacturing. So let's say LeBron's, and that, I'm sorry, it wasn't so much that she was against them moving their businesses offshore, but she had a problem with the idea that when Nike builds a factory in Bangladesh, that they're only paying the workers, let's say, 50 cents an hour, whatever. I'm just kind of, don't quote me on the numbers, but just using that as a base mark. And she said that the law should be that whatever they're paying workers here in the United States, Nike, since they're an American company, should have to pay those workers that same salary in Bangladesh. And I said, do you understand how moronic that idea is? Did you stop and think about that? Do you understand, like at that point, we were living in Colorado Springs. And me moving from Colorado Springs to the Washington, D.C. area, I'll tell you the cost of living in Colorado Springs is probably about 20 to 25% cheaper overall right? Housing, food, so on and so forth. But overall, the cost of living in Colorado Springs is cheaper than the cost of living in the Metro DC area. So if you took my DC salary to Colorado Springs, it would go a lot further, right? But likewise, you know, if I had the salary I was making in Colorado Springs is not going to go that far in the Washington, D.C. area. Well, here's the thing. If you go to Bangladesh, where let's say somebody is living, the average person lives on $5 a month, you know, just to kind of throw out numbers. Well, if you say that you have to pay workers in Bangladesh, if Nike has to pay workers in Bangladesh the same type of salary that they might have to pay workers at, you know, that Ford pays its workers at a factory in Detroit. Let's say factory workers in Detroit make $30 an hour. If Nike announced that they're going to build a new factory in Bangladesh and the salary was going to be $30 an hour, and that they're going to hire 1,000 people, do you have any clue on the chaos that would ensue? Because if you're going to pay $30 an hour in a place where people live on $5 a month, and there's only going to be 1,000 jobs, right? As soon as that's announced, they might say, hey, we're going to build this factory next year. But you understand that the line would begin today? People would begin lining up today to get one of those 1,000 jobs. And if you're number one, you don't want to be number 1,000 in line, because you're going to die. You know why? Because every other person is saying, man, my entire life will change if I could get that job. That would be like you and I, somebody saying, hey, I'm going to pay you $1 million a year to do the exact same job you're doing right now. I mean, do you understand what people would do for that? So this whole idea that they're being paid sweatshop wages or whatever like that, no, the cost of living is dramatically less. You cannot bring, it would ruin the economy. You cannot bring U.S. wages to and I don't like using the term third world country, but we'll use that for argument's sake, that you cannot bring a U.S. wage to a third world country without wrecking the economy. You will artificially inflate the entire economy. And like I said, the person, you know, the 1,000 people in line, there would be constant deaths because somebody's going to be willing to kill to get one of those coveted 1,000 slots. So this is the kind of stuff that people don't stop and think about. But, you know, also with sweatshops, you know, it's not a sweatshop. If you look at China, for example, if you understand that many people, remember, China has nearly 1.5 billion people. And as many people as that have moved into their mega cities, there's still hundreds of millions of people in China today who are living the exact same way that their ancestors have lived for thousands of years. Remember, China has the longest continuous history of any culture in the world. China has been China for a couple thousand years. And they've been living, you know, hand to mouth, you know, struggling every day to get their bowl of rice for millennium. And to understand that if you've made your, do you know how you get rice? You know rice is made in rice paddies, and a rice paddy is a rice field. And you know what they use in many cases in many parts of the world to fertilize rice? Yeah, human excrement, bovine excrement, whatever. It's crappy water. And, you know, and rice has to sit in flooded water. So basically, for thousands of years, the average person in China or India or one of those other countries, in order to get their bowl of rice, that they're out there in the heat and the humidity, bent over. When you see those pictures and they got the hat on, right? I mean, that hat serves a function. It's kind of to help to keep the sun off of their back. But they're bent over all day, every day, knee deep in crappy water. Let me just think about that for a second. Spending every day trying to eke out a living knee deep in crappy water. And then all of a sudden somebody says to you, hey, you know, Nike, whatever, Apple, whatever company is building a factory. And okay, the temperature might not be a pleasant 72 degrees in this factory. Maybe it's 79 degrees. A little bit warm for us. We'd be like, ooh, it's a little toasty in here. It's 79 degrees. It's not pleasant. But it beats the heck out of standing knee deep in crappy water with the sun beating down on you and mosquitoes flying around. Do you understand the difference? No, you don't. You know why? Because you're looking at everything through Western eyes and through having the benefit of living in America in 2016, and you don't understand that these people, they have to bring their level up. Now they're going to come up, they're going to come through the agrarian culture, economy, and through the Industrial Revolution faster than the United States did. But you can't they can't jump past. They cannot go from agrarian to information age. They have to transition through. And that's the point I wanted to bring up with people, is that stop looking at everything through Western eyes and trying to say, oh, they should live just like us. No, you know what? Working in a sweatshop, what we would call a sweatshop, is a doggone good job for a lot of those people. You know, for many of them, this gives them the opportunity to change their whole family. It gives them the opportunity to get, hey, the next generation won't have to, be in the fields. That's what their mindset is. Things can change. And it's no different than what it's been in the United States. You had black folks who were sharecroppers. They're not just black people. People, you came from a sharecropper family. Well, your family was willing to be sharecroppers so that the next generation did not have to be sharecroppers. You can't stop shortcutting or attempting to shortcut things for people. They have to go through this. It'll be shorter than what we went through, but they still have to go through that. So anyway, that's all I wanted to kind of run past people, is that you have to understand that there's a natural progression. The people that we say, oh, they're working in slave shops or whatever like that, yes. Are there people who are slaves? There's approximately, I think the World Health or whatever organization has estimated there's about 27 million people held in slavery in the world right now, which is an abominable number, but, not trying to sound cold-hearted, but out of 7.3 billion people on the planet, 27 million, you kind of do the math, right? Once again, that doesn't mean it doesn't suck and that it's not horrible for those 27 million, but you have to put that in that proper perspective. Don't think that everybody who's working in a, quote, what we call a sweatshop is a slave. And most of them, if you try to come in here with your arrogant Western ways and try to say, I'm going to shut you down because I don't think that they're treating you fairly, they will tell you to mind your own damn business. Because if you don't, for them it means back out to the rice paddies, knee deep in crappy water. So anyway, that's what I wanted to run past you guys, just to kind of give you something to think about. And let me know what you think. Holler at me, share it if you want to. But that's it. Take it there. Bye-bye.